Spyro 2 Ripto's Rage was the second game I ever played, and I loved it as a kid. The graphics, the characters, the humor, it all oozed with charm. And I have so many memories of this one too. Seeing out on planes for the first time, trying to hit those lizards in Glimmer, and being terrified of the robotic bugs and Robotica Farms for some reason. Too many memories to count, and I'm nowhere near the only one that's like this. This game is fondly remembered by many people. It's just too memorable. So, what is it about this game exactly that makes it so memorable and makes everyone remembers it so fondly?
After Spyro 1's immense success of 4.83 million units sold, of course they were making a sequel. Like any good follow-up, it sets out to improve on the previous game's faults. To me at least, with Spyro 2, I don't think Insomniac Games could have done much better. Improved levels, graphics, characters, story, and of course, gameplay.
It's a pretty good sign when I didn't have much of a problem with most of the things I listed in the first game, yet they still improved.
The game starts off with Spyro and Sparks running through a field, I'd assume artisans, reminiscing on their previous adventure taking down Nasty Nork, and how they deserve a vacation. Spyro then decides to take a portal to Dragon Shores. Meanwhile, three characters are trying to summon a dragon through a portal, and who'd have guessed it, that dragon ends up being Spyro. Spyro looks angry throughout this entire game, and I like to think it's because he's not in Dragon Shores. Can you blame him? The reason they wanted a dragon in particular is because they needed someone to deal with Ripto, this game's antagonist, because in his words...
A dragon? You brought a dragon to Avalar? I hate dragons! Gah!
Ripto's intentions are pretty basic. He just wants to take over Avalar, this game's world. So yeah, once again, a pretty basic story, which is what I'd expect in a platformer. What really makes the story shine are the characters. Ripto is probably the best villain the series has ever seen. He's so unnecessary, hostile, and angry, no matter the circumstance. When he's not screaming at his minions,
Crush! Kill it! Kill it!
To a fairy, he's screaming about his hatred for dragons. I don't know how to explain it, I just get immense pleasure from Ripto's pain, okay? It does help he has a pretty great boss fight. Then there's Hunter, the goof of the group. They have some pretty funny dialogue with him, but the reason why I believe he's the best character is his voice acting. He's voiced by Greg Berger, and he's so wonderful, and the cutscenes he sounds fine, a little cheesy, but fine, but the in-game bits are hilarious to me. He for some reason overemphasizes every word he says, and it's incredible.
Incredible! You've got real talent. I could use a partner like you. You can have the orb I found in my other flipper, too.
Imagine if I spent the whole review talking like this. Wouldn't that be incredible? Tom Kenny voices Spyro in this game, and he's probably the best Spyro voice. I don't know how to explain it, I just think he fits in perfectly. I could be saying this because he's the voice I heard the most as a kid, but I don't think that's the case. Nowadays, Tom Kenny is considered a legendary voice actor, appearing in pretty much everything. His best known role, and the role that put him on the map, is definitely SpongeBob SquarePants. I was both shocked and overjoyed to hear he's coming back in Reignited Trilogy. I just didn't think Activision would care enough to go after the fan favorite. Tom Kenny also voices a few other characters. There's a professor, a mole scientist guy, not much to talk about there, and there's my other favorite, the Electrolls. They're an entire species of monotone SpongeBobs.
We've always had trouble with the gear grinders, but now they've set up force fields to separate us. If you can find diodes, you can use them to turn off the force fields.
We'll probably get 40 lashes.
Oh no!
I'm sure he voices a few other NPCs, but does anything matter after monotone SpongeBob? As for other characters, there's Alora the... goat?
I'm a fawn, you dork.
Oh, sorry.
There's Zoe the fairy. Ugh. She constantly interrupts the game with tutorials. I understand why tutorials exist, but she repeats a lot of the same stuff, and I've played the game hundreds of times. I should be able to turn them off. Aside from her, there's Ripto's minions, Crush and Gulp, and loads of NPCs. Each level even has its own race of people that's unique to that specific level.
That's a pretty big step up from Spyro 1. In that game, once you killed all the enemies and freed all the dragons, outside of some fodder, those levels were empty. Having NPCs helps immensely when it comes to making the world feel like a world.
Similar to the last game, this game is a collectathon, the main one being orbs. There's a total of 64 of them, and you need at least 40 to beat the game. They're scattered all over the place, and you get them by finding them hidden somewhere or fulfilling tasks. There's also talismans. Each level in the first 2 hub worlds have one, and you'll need all of them to reach the bosses. You get them just by getting to the end of the level. They're not a big deal, but my issue with this is this means that this game isn't anywhere near as open as Super Mario 64, or even the later games in the series. The game does open up in the final third, but only having orbs as rewards. But that's it. It doesn't affect me because I personally only ever go after 100%, but if you're doing a casual playthrough and you want to say skip Fracture Hills, well, that's too bad. Gems are still very much a thing, except they now come in baskets and vases instead of treasure chests. They're also a lot easier to find thanks to the Gem Finder ability, which you can use by holding down all 4 shoulder buttons and sparks will point to the nearest gem. Some may call this cheating, but the way I look at it, using it only prevents wandering around for hours looking for that very last red gem, and I'm sorry, that's not fun. Gems now have more purpose. In Spyro 1, they were roadblocks preventing you from getting to the next hub world. Basically, the balloonist wouldn't let you cross unless you had X amount of gems. This time, moneybags. Moneybags is a greedy, rich English bear that always requests Spyro a small fee of hundreds or even thousands of gems to do anything from teaching Spyro a new move to just opening a door. I like how they attach the personality to Roblox in this game. My problem is they didn't go the whole 9 yards with him. They have some humor based around him, but not much. Most of the time when you decline his offers, he says something like, "I'll be here if you change your mind." That's boring. To be fair, I'm probably only complaining about this because the later games do this so much better. Like there's a part in Spyro Season of Ice where a couple of fairies are stuck in a small deadly cave, and Moneybags is guarding it. He'll stop if you pay just a few gems, but if you say no, he'll say something like, "Don't worry, Spyro, I'm sure the fairy screaming will end soon enough." That's nowhere near the only example. I just don't want to bring up Spyro 3 because that's what the next video is about. The levels themselves are a huge step up. In Spyro 1, a lot of levels, particularly in Artisans and Dreamweavers, were mostly castles. There was some variety like Peacekeepers or Beastmakers, but not enough. Spyro 2 has everything: a robotic farm, a gem mining area, an Asian-inspired mountain with hockey-playing monks. There's even a war between 2 levels, and in both levels, you actually help out that levels take out the other levels. That's kinda messed up. Once again, to connect these levels are the hub worlds. The summer forests, autumn plains, and winter tundra. Obviously, each level is based off of one of the 4 seasons. No spring though. Yes, I know about Spring Savannah. These are some of my favorite hub worlds in gaming. There's fewer of them compared to the first game, but in my opinion, they're far better. Spyro 1's hub worlds felt like normal levels, as in they had enemies, pits, and other hazards. Spyro 2's hub worlds are safe areas, where the only challenge is figuring out how to get every collectible. To me at least, this makes more sense for a hub world. The lack of danger allows you to get a better grasp on the controls, and gives you a bit of a breather between actual levels. It also helps differentiate from the normal levels. As I said before, the hub worlds in this game are pretty fantastic. They're all really pretty and have some really cool level design. Like this part in Autumn Plains where you're on the absolute top and glide on a far-off platform, or the indoor tree inside the castle in Summer Forest.
These were all things I remember since I was a kid, but the secret that stood out to me most is the waterfall secret in Winter Tundra.
In Winter Tundra, there's an orb on top of a waterfall in a cave with no obvious way of getting it up there. What you have to do is glide over to a small pond and swim into a hidden cave that eventually leads into the waterfall. That sort of thing really scratches that exploration itch of mine. Oh yeah, I didn't even mention you can now swim along with a bunch of other stuff. Spyro still has all the same moves he had in the first game, breathing fire, charging, and gliding, but you can now do a couple of new things with those moves. There's a hover. Basically, you press triangle at the end of the glide and you get just a little more height and distance. This is pretty nice because it prevents the occasional moment where you barely miss a jump. Spyro 2 also introduced the double jump. Kinda. I say kinda because it's a glitch. When you charge at the height of your jump gets a little higher, and this destroys the game. You can skip puzzles, break boundaries, or just use it to make traversing a level a little more easy. Again, some may call this cheating, but I don't care. It makes the game more fun to me, and it's not like I've never 100%ed the game without it. Some new intended moves would be swimming underwater, climbing ladders, and the head bash. You get all of these by paying money bags a small fee. The last two are pretty self-explanatory, but swimming underwater, believe it or not, is amazing. You can swim above water right off the bat, but once you pay money bags that small fee of just 500 gems, oh boy! Swimming in games is usually something worth dreading. It's slow and you need to worry about that whole air thing. That's simply not the case in Spyro. Spyro doesn't need to worry about air at all, and Sparks is in a bubble. That's adorable. You know that charge move I spent several minutes explaining why it's amazing in the last video? You can do that underwater. It makes swimming so much faster, and you can still charge and break faces and kill enemies. You can also charge out of the water like a dolphin. This, Majora's Mask, and the Tasmanian Tiger are the only games where I feel comfortable with the sentence. Swimming is fun in this game. You can also swim slowly by holding down the X button for more precision, but I personally never use this. Spyro's underwater controls are shockingly good and no one will ever convince me otherwise. Spyro's ground controls got a bit of an upgrade. He doesn't have that weird charge trajectory issue and then they fixed that whole losing control while falling thing. His overall movement feels just a little tighter. I already mentioned how big of a step up these levels are from Spyro 1, but I really want to expand on the levels themselves. The levels in this game are phenomenal. Starting with Autumn Plains. Unfortunately, I feel Spyro 2 has a bit of a slow start. Summer Forest's levels aren't bad, I just don't think they stand out all that much. Glimmer, Idle Springs, and Sunny Beach are okay, but I outright dislike Colossus and Hurricos. The only level I actually love in Summer Forest would be Aquaria Towers. Aquaria Towers is pretty interesting. As you could probably tell from the name, it's a water level. It starts off with no water, which is a little unfortunate seeing how it's populated entirely by seahorses. But as you go through the level, you slowly fill it back up by pressing these buttons, which is needed if you want to get higher up for progress. I just think it's a cool idea. There's also these instant kill robot sharks that terrified me as a child. Starting with Autumn Plains, the levels get stronger. Zephyr, Breeze Harbor, Skelos Badlands, Magma Cone, and Shady Oasis are all great levels. Fracture Hills, on the other hand...
Thank you for releasing me.
They know.
Winter Tundra is somehow even better. Robotica Farms and Metropolis are probably the best levels in the game, and Mystic Marsh is pretty cool too, being one of the few Spyro stages that isn't very linear, instead being entirely open. In terms of looks, this game is gorgeous considering it's a PS1 game. Every level is so pretty. I may not think highly of Hurricos, but the rain actually connects to the ground. It's not just a filter. They thankfully kept the level of detail and the glimmer from the gems from Spyro 1. The animation in the cutscenes is top notch. Look at it! My one criticism comes from the NPCs kinda looking like Muppets. I briefly mentioned that there are tasks in this game. If you've seen my Spyro 1 video, you know my biggest complaint with that game was a lack of variety. Aside from the occasional flight level, you only collect gems in that game. That's obviously still a thing in this game, but they added mini-games and objectives. This game will have you do things like playing hockey, collecting the bones of a dancing skeleton, riding a very troubling trolley, and growing various beanstalks in order to reunite two forbidden lovers, who are literally named Romeo and Juliet.
Romeo! Romeo! Wherefore art thou, Romeo? Oh, there's Romeo. You can have this. I don't need it anymore.
What?
For the most part, these are pretty fun. For the most part. Some of these flat out suck. The generator mission in Hurricos is genuinely the only reason why I dislike that stage. It's not hard, it's just incredibly tedious and takes forever. The hockey game is just poorly designed. It's hard to tell where the puck is since the camera isn't zoomed out. I would have preferred a bird's eye view. And Spyro doesn't control well on ice. You can't turn on a dime, which causes moments like this. Honestly, the best strategy for this one is just burn your opponent repeatedly until the puck comes to a dead stop. Now let's not forget about Fracture Hills. There's a mission where you have to lead an alchemist to Hunter, and the challenge comes from keeping him safe from the Earthshapers. He takes the most nonsensical path ever, even faking you out a couple spots. It's frustrating to say the least. What really makes this one bad is a follow-up mission with Hunter. This one's a lot easier, if a little hectic, but the problem is you need the head bash, a move you are not going to have in your first visit.
And guess what? Any progress you made on previous missions is gone. Meaning if you mistakenly do the Alchemist mission your first visit to Fracture Hills, You're gonna have to do it again if you want the follow-up orb. That's bad game design, and I really hope Reignited Trilogy fixes this.
The whole missions not saving progress normally isn't an issue in this game, but it definitely is here. And how could I neglect to mention that very troubling trolley? There's a particular mission in Breeze Builders where you have to collect these gears on a track, but if you fail, the NPC for that mission will say,
Trouble with the trolley, eh?
every time you fail, and on your first playthrough, you will. A lot. It's a long ride, and each time you fail, you have to listen to that stupid bird. I wish I could lie to you guys and say I failed a lot on this one while recording and have a fun little montage, but I didn't. In fact, I might have done it in one try if I didn't have an abnormally itchy foot while recording. That doesn't mean I'll forget my previous anguish, though. To stray away from the topic of hair-pulling missions, this game is the source of the cutest game mission ever. In Crystal Glacier, there's a mission where you have to find this guy's missing pet snow leopard, and once you find him, he's just looking for some food. They made him act and sound like a cat, and it's so adorable and charming. This game is charming. It's full of small, unnecessary bits that I love, like how those guys with spears say they'll make a platform for you, so they just impale and hang on the wall, or how about that dancing skeleton in Skilos Badlands, the fact that enemies laugh at you when you get hit, or how about every single level has an intro and outro cutscene. They're all pretty consistently funny too, and most of them involve murder of some kind, and I love it. I particularly love Colossus's intro. To add to that unnecessary fun stuff, the cheat codes! They're not boring cheat codes either, like have all moves or get an additional hit point. Okay, those are codes, but that's not what I'm talking about. You can do things like activate big head mode, change the color of Spyro, or make him flat. I love making Spyro flat and black and calling him Mr. Cayman Spyro. Credit to Teal Game Master for that one. Flight levels are back, but this time they're called speedways. They're pretty similar to Spyro 1's, but they're a bit more straightforward, and I personally feel they're a little better in this game compared to the first. Once you beat the first speedway, you can go and complete a bonus objective to get an orb. They're pretty fun, but I don't find any of them particularly challenging, even the last one. A lot of fans seem to think the burglar one in Metro Speedway is hard. Yeah, I don't agree. The last bit is a little tricky, but it's still not that bad. I'm surprised I haven't brought up the music. It's once again composed by Stuart Copeland, and thankfully it contains that distinctive sound I mentioned. Don't know what it is about the soundtrack, but I love it. Spyro 1 soundtrack has been very slowly growing on me over the years, but this one took no time at all. Glimmer's theme may be a bit repetitive, but it's so catchy. Aquaria Towers is so great, and I love how it uses scuba equipment noises. Breeze Harbor. Oh, problematic grip cars aside, that might actually be my favorite song in the series. The only bit I'm not too fond of are the hub world themes. I'm not sure how to explain it, but there are all these really peaceful sounds. Here's an example. I know some Spyro fans will hate me for saying that, but when it comes to platformers, I prefer songs to be, you know, songs, not atmospheric noises. It's not a big deal at all, it definitely achieves its goal of being peaceful. I'm just not a fan of that one small aspect of this soundtrack. Ratchet & Clank fans might recognize this one, skill points. They're pretty much achievements. They have you do some pretty basic stuff like destroy every windmill in Hurricos, or land on this tiki in Idle Springs. Some of them can be really hard, like beat the hockey game without your opponent scoring at all, or beating a boss without taking damage. My favorite is shooting Ripto in the face with the missile and Gulps fight. The reward for doing these is a free life for each one, and then I'll save that one for later. Speaking of boss fights, I don't think there's a single thing that improved more from the first game. There are actually boss fights now, and good ones at that. There's 3 this time, Crush, Gulp, and Ripto. Crush is a little tricky considering he's the first boss, but nothing that should keep you from beating the game. Gulp will give you a lot more trouble your first playthrough, but I personally don't have much trouble with him anymore. Please ignore the fact I only had 1 hit point left. Ripto, oh ho ho!
Last video, I didn't put a spoiler warning right before the segment I talked about Nasty Nork or the normal ending, simply because I didn't think they were worth it. Not only because they weren't very interesting, but also because the game is almost as old as me. But this time is different.
Spyro 2's final boss is really cool. It has 3 phases. In the first 2 phases, you have to collect various orbs falling from the sky. These are the same orbs you collected throughout the game. You get different abilities from them, Super Flame, Supercharge, and a new one, this Acidic Bomb attack. Which ability you get is determined by the color of the 3rd orb you collect. The first phase is just Ripto on foot, the second is on a robotic Gulp, and then there's the 3rd. The 3rd phase is pretty cool. The floor collapses and you're forced to use a Flight and Super Flame hybrid power-up from Metropolis. Oh yeah, Ripto dies. I love this fight, it's a ginormous step up from Spyro 1 and it's actually somewhat challenging. Once you beat Ripto, obviously Avalar is saved and Moneybags gets beaten up by Hunter. I wish I could have done that. Oh yeah, you get your gems back, but we all know the real highlight here. Roll credits. Wait, we're not done here. Assuming you have at least 45 orbs, Spyro at long last goes to Dragon Shores. It's a theme park run by not-so-nasty Norks. It has a few things you can do. You can dunk people in a tank, you can shoot some ducks, ride a roller coaster that gives some inconvenient cable car flashbacks. You can get some tokens for completing all these tasks, and once you get all of them, you can go to the theater. Don't get too excited, it's just a cutscene viewer. I still appreciate the option, it's just kind of a lame reward. You know what isn't a lame reward? This game is 100% reward. Permanent Super Flame. Within your current save file, you can't do much with it outside of making Gulp way easier and making that no-hit skill point a joke. But you can restart the game with it. A lot of people don't know this, but all you have to do is enter a save file with it activated, exit to the main menu, and start a new file. That's it.
I'm not really sure if this is a glitch or not. The way you do it and the fact the game never tells you makes me think it is. I've heard someone say that they think it's intentional because they kept it in later releases of the game, but they also kept the double jump glitch, so I don't think that logic is very solid. I'm personally leaning towards it being a glitch, but either way, it's a thing you can do.
Finally, the reward for getting every skill point, the epilogue. It tells you what happens to every character after the game. It even shows a bunch of unused enemies. It's pretty cool, but personally, this is very much a one and done type thing. I only ever got every skill point once, because I don't care about them all that much. At least not enough to get all of them. In fact, I haven't even finished Spyro 3's. I'll probably do that in between this video and the next for the sake of the review. Either way, I still appreciate the reward for getting all of them, even if I don't typically care enough to do so.
So that was Spyro 2, Ripto's Rage, or Gateway to Glimmer if you're from Power Regions. This is one of my favorite games ever, and easily my favorite Spyro game. If you're at all interested in the Spyro franchise, this is your starting point. And this might be nostalgia talking, but I think if you're a fan of 3D platformers, this game is an absolute must. And like I said in the last video, in case you somehow didn't know, the original trilogy is currently being remade, coming out in September in the form of Spyro Reignited Trilogy. I'm so excited for that. So, I'm willing to bet it's going to be a really good game, and if you're patient, it wouldn't be a bad idea to wait to play this game until Reignited Trilogy comes out. But if you don't have a PlayStation 4 or Xbox One, playing the original games is not a bad option either. I still think they hold up pretty well. So I guess I'll see you guys next time when I review Spyro 3, Year of the Dragon. Bye.